This video is brought to you by GiveWell. French politics is in an absolute state at the moment. Since the snap election a couple of months ago, where no party or coalition won an outright majority, French President Emmanuel Macron and his fractious parliament have been trying and failing to form a functioning government, exacerbating an ever-escalating debt crisis. Things came to a head on Wednesday, when France's government was toppled for the first time since the 1960s, effectively by not one but two votes of no confidence, tabled by both La France Insoumise and the National Rally. So in this video, we'll take a look at the ongoing chaos in French politics, why the government has fallen, and what might happen next. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop when we release new videos. First though, you've got to understand the recent background. After the European Parliament elections in June, which were won decisively by Marine Le Pen's National Rally, Macron called a snap legislative election and challenged the French to, quote, make the right choice for themselves and future generations. His thinking was that by going to parliamentary elections early, France would be forced into deciding they didn't want the far right running the country, and instead would rally around his own centrist Ensemble alliance. But things didn't go quite as planned. Ensemble fared poorly in the first round, and while tactical coalitions between Ensemble and the left-wing New Popular Front, or NFP alliance, did mean that the National Rally won less seats in the second round than they were expected to, no party won an outright majority, and the NFP actually won the most seats. This seemed to support the idea that voters truly had had enough of Macron, and France's parliament, the National Assembly, ended up split awkwardly into three blocks, left, centre and right, with no clear option for a governing majority. Subsequently, there was further disagreement over the appointment of France's prime minister. The NFP argued that, because it had won the legislative election, it had the right to form a government and to propose a left-wing prime minister. However, Macron didn't like that, and said, ironically enough, that the NFP's lack of parliamentary majority meant they'd be immediately toppled by a no-confidence vote. So he then decided to appoint Michel Barnier as Prime Minister. Outside of France, Barnier is perhaps best known as the EU's former chief Brexit negotiator, but he comes from the centre-right Les Républicains party in France, and he actually put himself forward as their presidential candidate for the 2022 election, running on a surprisingly hardline anti-immigration law and order platform. Barnier ultimately lost to Valérie Pécresse, who went on to become Les Républicains' candidate, but his tack to the right earned him some credibility with Le Pen & co., which is one of the reasons they tacitly accepted his nomination as Prime Minister. But even though the left still weren't happy with Barnier's appointment, with the support of the National Rally and Ensemble, Barnier effectively had the go-ahead to begin his programme to fix France's debt crisis. For context, France's deficit equates to more than 6% of its GDP, exceeding the 3% maximum set out by the EU. Barnier accordingly pledged to get this down to 5% of GDP in 2025 and 3% by 2029. And to reach it, in October he proposed a 2025 budget consisting of 20 billion euros in tax increases and 40 billion euros in spending cuts. But neither the NFP nor the National Rally supported this, as both had fought the election on platforms that would have increased France's debt even further. Barnier did make some last-minute concessions to the National Rally though, including on electricity taxes and healthcare spending, but this still wasn't enough, and on Monday, Barnier resorted to Article 49.3 of France's constitution, allowing him to force the budget through without a vote. Predictably, both the NFP and the National Rally immediately tabled votes of no confidence, which happened on Wednesday. So what happened on Wednesday? Well, after 48 grueling hours from Monday to Wednesday, during which the no-confidence motions were examined, the vote went ahead on Wednesday evening and passed with 331 votes in the 577-seat National Assembly, forcing Barnier to resign. Accordingly, Barnier's minority government was toppled by a combination of the left and far right. This makes 73-year-old Barnier the shortest-serving French Prime Minister since 1958, and plunges France right back into political chaos. After his defeat in the no-confidence vote, Barnier said it had been an honour to have served France and the French people with dignity, but that the vote would make everything more serious and more difficult. However, we should point out that the no-confidence vote is better viewed as an expression of frustration at Macron's leadership, rather than with Barnier himself. An IFOP survey conducted in mid-November showed that Macron's popularity as president had hit an all-time low of just 22%, while Barnier's popularity sat more comfortably at 36%, down from 40% in October. Moreover, when we compare both their approval ratings from September, 25% for Macron versus 45% for Barnier, we find a 20 percentage point gap, the largest ever between a sitting president and prime minister. So what does this all mean for France now? Well, there have already been plenty of calls for Macron to resign, from both the left and the right. La France Insoumise's Clémence Guettet said in a post on X that the resignation of Emmanuel Macron is the only way out of this political crisis. And the party's former leader, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, said Macron must go to restore the voice of the French people's votes. Similarly, Bardella and Le Pen took aim at Macron and Les Macronistes, with Bardella posting on X, "There is no way out for a government that takes up the thread of Macronism." However, Macron has made clear that he has no intention of resigning from the presidency. Moreover, France can't have another legislative election until at least next summer, as there has to be a year in between, meaning the parliamentary chaos is likely to continue for a good while longer. With Barnier gone, Macron will now have to appoint another new PM, who might have to be from the left. But this would be bad news for France's bond markets and for its debt crisis. In terms of the budget itself, though, this is a bit more complicated. We've borrowed a flowchart from France's Le Monde newspaper here to show you how things might proceed. Essentially, if a new government is formed in December, it can propose a budget with 70 days for Parliament to examine it. And if they somehow speed through this and pass it by the end of the year, then all will be well. But what's more likely, though, is either sequence of events down the other side of the chart. This ends either with a total budgetary shutdown, unseen in the history of the French Fifth Republic, or with Macron using exceptional powers under Article 16 of the Constitution to take budgetary measures without passing them through Parliament. Whatever happens, though, if 2024 had an award for most chaotic politics of the year, France would undoubtedly be up there as a contender. Now, when you make a big purchase, say a car or a new mattress, how do you make sure that you're making the right choice? You could rely on all of the marketing copy in the product's ads, but many people find they need an independent resource that's rigorous and trustworthy. Today's sponsor, GiveWell, provides that independent resource for a different kind of purchase, a donation. For 17 years, GiveWell has been researching charitable organizations and only directs funding to a few of the highest impact opportunities they've found. That's things like bed nets to prevent malaria. It costs about $5 to provide one net. Nets can reduce the number of malaria infections. Enough nets and a large enough drop in infections can save a life in expectation. Together, over 125,000 donors have used GiveWell to donate more than $2 billion. Rigorous evidence suggests that these donations will save over 200,000 lives and improve the lives of millions more. GiveWell wants as many donors as possible to make informed decisions about high-impact giving. You can find all of their research and recommendations on their site for free. You can make tax-deductible donations to their recommended funds or charities, and GiveWell doesn't take a cut. I particularly like GiveWell as it ensures that your money is doing a lot to help those the most in need. Here at TLDR, we're big believers in doing research to find out what's really going on, and that's exactly the approach that GiveWell takes to charities. If you've never donated to GiveWell's recommended charities before, you can have your donation matched up to $100 before the end of the year, or as long as matching funds last. To claim your match, go to givewell.org and pick YouTube, then enter TLDR News at checkout. Make sure they know that you heard about GiveWell from TLDR News to get your donation matched. Again, that's givewell.org to donate or to find out more.